I looked for a man among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land, so I would not have to destroy it. But I found none. Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 30.
This is especially for men. You probably grieve as I do over how few godly older men are both courageously loving in Jesus and willing to help younger men. It seems as if most of them retired from spiritual responsibility once they left employment. For years, one of the former members of our board of directors traveled the country. He was trying to find older men who are willing to get involved to help the younger generations. He couldn't find even one. Not one. I remember at the end of the seminar at a congregation in Atlanta, I was sitting with all the men. Two guys in their 30s asked if any of the older men who were present would mentor them. Out of the 36 men over age 50 in the group, not one volunteered. Not one. One of these younger guys, a brand new believer, left the faith shortly afterward. He realized that no one cared if he was a brother or not. And without discipling, his relationship with Jesus withered. The other man is now my spiritual son. He's followed us across the country as family in Jesus.
All throughout the Hebrew Scriptures in particular, our Lord emphasized His pattern of transmitting truth from the older generation to those that follow.
Fathers were commanded to pass along God's will and His ways to not only their sons, but also to their grandsons. That way, each generation would not only hear the truth at least twice from an older man, but have double the opportunity to keep sharing it themselves.
God wanted to reinforce the right perspective of who He is.
He also wants to bless each generation through their love and obedient trust in Him, so that you and your son and your grandson might fear the Lord your God, to keep all His statutes and His commandments, which I commanded you, all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 2.
The impact that godly older men can have in the lives of other men can't be overemphasized. In 1960, children had a 90% probability of living in a two-parent home. A child born in 1980 had less than 30% chance of being raised by both birth parents. In a very short period of time, something important was lost, and the situation has only gotten worse.
We're failing to show our children how to succeed us in the covenant of marriage. Two factors in particular have contributed to the demise of healthy marriages.
The failure by a man who is a servant leader to exercise godly authority in the home. The failure to understand God's purposes for marriage and childbearing.
During the last century, much of what has always been considered parental responsibility has become the domain of schools, including Sunday schools and youth groups. A father's God-given authority as servant leader and his responsibilities to spiritually train his wife and children have been drastically undermined. The man's jurisdiction has been stolen from him, and many don't even realize that they forfeited it.
We're suffering severe consequences of the loss of fatherly authority in this atomistic culture. On all sides, it seems as though Satan has made it as difficult as he can for men to fulfill their responsibilities. From a scriptural standpoint, I think the 1900s will be remembered as the century in which the U.S. became an effeminate nation. The men simply withdrew, and women took over.
God had a specific purpose for creating two genders. There is a lot more behind the words male and female than most Christians pay attention to. And God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27.
Because the genders are so different, as we mentioned in previous lessons, Only men can truly understand the wiring of boys, and women the unique wiring of girls. That's by our Father's design.
The whole intergenerational responsibility of helping boys become men has been forfeited to our culture's unisex focus and emphasis on individual rights. Many Christians have been deceived and have failed to recognize the true biblical nature of male development in particular.
Prophetic voices today have been warning how much the spirit of Jezebel, an effeminate, domineering, demonic entity, controls this nation and much of Hellenized Christendom as well.
Women clergy now call themselves reverend and pastor and rabbi. Surely there is no doubt that, like ancient Israel, we're in a time in which our Lord again grieves.
My people, children oppress them, and women are ruling over them. My people, your guides lead you astray and obliterate the paths you should follow. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 12.
Today's culture has the largest group of immature people under age 50 that ever existed.
Adolescence used to end at age 19 during the 1960s. A person is considered adult when they take full responsibility for themselves and their actions.
Adolescence now extends well into the late 30s, and this trend is being driven by immature males.
But prolonged adolescence isn't totally the fault of men who've resisted taking full responsibility for their lives. Something has gone drastically wrong in this culture to keep men from maturing, even within Christianity.
Just think about it. When we men who are now over 50 got married, we were generally responsible enough to have a wife. Now, men who are still adolescent in motivation and responsibility are trying to learn after they're married the same responsibility we had before we got married.
This sorry reality has prompted increasing numbers of women to seek divorce.
It's also aroused the attention of our Father in heaven. He's responded by restoring the Hebraic foundations for his children.
Over 85% of all divorces are now instituted by women. Since the end of World War II in 1945, this nation has dashed headlong into female dominance over many areas of culture and Christendom.
Few in Western society seem to have examined the Bible to discern the gender responsibilities God has ordained. People in the past took it for granted that boys would become responsible men and girls become mature women.
If you recall, a biblically healthy society is a trustee family. It's patriarchal, with self-sacrificial men in authority as servant leaders who serve the interests of the whole family.
Unhealthy societies are atomistic. People are individualist and preoccupied with self. Feminist movements abound. Every culture in history that has reached this stage has destroyed itself. And the U.S. is in the process of societal meltdown right now.
Our purpose in writing these lessons isn't to save this nation. We want to equip the followers of Jesus to live for Him and to raise godly generations to succeed them, no matter what happens to the United States.
As we'll see in later lessons, Hebraic home fellowships are patriarchal. They're led by mature male servant leaders who personally role model a Christ-like way of life.
As we continue to share the Hebraic foundations, we're trying to help establish trustee-style faith communities with converts from today's atomistic culture. With God's intervention, it can be done, but the task will neither be easy nor readily accepted.
Distinctively humble men are needed who will first apply the Hebraic foundations in their own homes. We men who follow Jesus are trying to be obedient in one of the most difficult periods in history. The atomistic culture around us and the religious establishment it fosters oppose everything our Father is restoring.
Please read our Hebraic article, I Hate Nicolaitanism. As you'll see, today's Nicolaitan religious system, which has so readily copied the atomistic culture, is a destructive entity God hates and is warring against.
Never forget that the more impossible a situation appears, the more possible it is for our Lord to bring it about for His glory.
We don't think He's looking for large crowds of men standing together rooting in stadiums.
He's searching for one man who will stand in the gap in his own home. That man, bent on being obedient and bringing glory to our Father, is all that's needed, one home at a time.
A shepherd boy named David could defeat the Philistine giant Goliath with a sling and stone. It was the young man's relentless heart devotion to his God that made victory possible. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 45.
Just think what our Lord can do with you, a man who has the Spirit of Christ in him. The only question is, are you a man with resolve, ready to stand in the gap?